G'day, mate. 40 here. I like the direction of this new Trump administration. Love Susie Wiles as Donald Trump's chief of staff. And here are some of my favorite tweets that I've bookmarked. Fox News reporter Bill Maloogian says border patrol and ICE morale is surging following Trump's win and the appointment of Tom Homan as the border czar. Reached out to a handful of contacts to gauge the temperature. It sounds like a night and day change. One officer says there's a total 180. Troops are finally feeling like the sun is coming out after a very long storm. People are fired up to have support. It's amazing because we all became so numb. I don't think we realize how bad until we finally have hope again. Everyone is happy about Tom Homan's return as the border czar. Another official, I feel that people now know they'll get to do the work they signed up to do, and they want to do that work. They know they can get the bad guys now. Public safety threats, national security threats, gang members. Here we come. Morale high, especially with the Homan news too. Ecstatic. Go to work. Says another officer. Morale is even higher than the first time he won. Another agent. We've all been hopeful, but the give-ups are still trickling in. Nothing will change until Homan takes the leash off of us. Dude, people who are going to retire are not. Everyone's happy. So morale surging. And you've heard a lot about Project 25. Did you know that it's going to include mandatory high school relationships for everyone? Here are some dudes walking through Manhattan with MAGA hats on. But in Beverly Hills, you see more people wearing MAGA gear. So Donald Trump won a majority of the country, and it's much more socially acceptable for people, even in Manhattan, to associate with Donald Trump, but it's not exactly what people were expecting. So it gets a lot of looks still. But Donald Trump massively increased his vote totals in New York and Los Angeles, and New Jersey is now virtually a swing state. So good idea walking through Manhattan wearing Trump gear. Okay. Nick Fuentes got in a bit of trouble. Some woman came to his door to harass him, and he reacted by pepper spraying her, grabbing her phone, pushing her down the steps. So you can't randomly pepper spray people that ring your doorbell. You'll be arrested if you pepper spray a Girl Scout or a Jehovah's Witness. However, the person indicated that she was there for malicious reasons. You might have a legal justification. And also, if you just show up at someone's door, all right, to harass them. All right, this woman got off easy. All right, you show up to someone's door to harass them. All right, a lot of bad things are likely to happen. I mean, she's lucky she didn't get shot. All right, you come to someone's door, you are going to evoke a visceral response, and you may not like the consequences, and the police may not be there in time to save you. So it's hilarious watching all these football players and beautiful women imitating Donald Trump's dance. Why are people pretending that the only way to deport people who are here illegally is to go door to door in the most intense way possible? There are all sorts of other policies short of that scenario. All right? You can prosecute businesses that hire illegally, drying out the supply of jobs, simply not giving out free benefits and free housing, and taxing remittances heavily. So if you stop rolling out the red carpet to illegals, stop giving them jobs, free stuff, and free housing, and stop making it more attractive to people to break the law by coming here, right, you're going to get some positive results. All right, we know more about the new Trump administration. Here is Mark Halperin from a few minutes ago.
Has become a demonized figure in Trump world. And as I absorb the dominant media's coverage of his appointment, which does not require Senate confirmation, and Tom Homan's border czar, I think you're still seeing some level of denial amongst Democrats and Democratic media about the issue of immigration, casting these guys as evil monsters who plan to do exactly what Donald Trump said he would do in a second term, deal with immigration. The press and the Democrats and the other co-equal branches must be aggressive and diligent in holding Donald Trump's administration accountable to the public interest. They can't break the law. When they go further than the public sentiment, there should be pushback. But if all they're doing are legal things that Donald Trump said he would do, and which, by the way, poll shows are overwhelmingly popular, I think it's disingenuous and foolish and bad politics for Democrats and the Democratic media to continue to call those things out in a way that suggests they're evil.
That the senators are immune from outside influences right now. I've obviously disagree with that. What do you think?
I think they're far more resistant than House members are, both because of the election cycle and because in the Senate, virtually everybody every morning combs the hair of a future president and waits patiently for the current guy to finish screwing up so they can become the person that gets to run. So there's just a very different psychology being in the Senate. But I think if the pressure is large enough, if it begins to be a question of how do I go back home, because the problem becomes Trump is sufficiently popular among Republicans that if you're a Republican senator who wants to go home in the next 90 days, do you really want to be the guy who stood up against Donald Trump and have every person at the local diner or the local grocery store? I had this happen when I fought Bush on taxes. And even though I clearly represented the party base, there were enough Bush loyalists to come up to me and say, "You're a traitor." And they weren't negotiating or discussing. They were rendering judgment. And so I think that kind of pressure, I mean, President Trump is in an unusual position of moral authority inside the Republican Party in a way that I can't remember, even with Reagan. I don't remember quite this level of intensity.
Dan.
Far be it for me to question our preeminent historian here. Now, I mean, I guess my only question might be what you think of Trump's push for recess appointments and
well, I think it tells you what 4 years of being able to think about what you learned starts to do for you. I think in the back of his head, he has a checklist of everything that could screw up getting things done. And I believe, because I think he instinctively knows that the 2026 election is the real crucible. And that therefore he has to build such momentum that people decide, like Roosevelt in 34, that they have enough hope in where he's going, that they're going to give him a few more seats. And that means he's got to be able to move fast. And he learned painfully that the system's designed to not move fast, and even when you want it to, and he's going to have a lot of folks trying to stop him. So I think you'll see him do a series of things that have been pretty well thought out. And this is partly the America First Policy Institute's work, but they've thought through and they've gamed out how do we clear the runway, and what are the things that could stop us? And this is a small but telling example of how many detailed thoughts there have been about this administration.
You know, I will tell you,
Go ahead, Sean.
The point that the speaker just made can't be underscored. The 4 years that these guys spent out of power, America First Policy Institute, the Heritage Foundation, have all been saying, okay, well, how do we take that policy that was talked about, write it all out? Who are the right people to staff it? How do we get it through? How do we overcome these obstacles? I think when I said this earlier, you're going to see President Trump come out of the gate on January 20th in a way that I don't think anybody's fully appreciating now. They know what they want to do, how they want to do it, and whom they want it to do in a way that you wouldn't have had in back-to-back administrations.
And let me just say one last thing, I'll get out of your way, Mark. But to build on what Sean just said, it's not January 20th. He's already negotiating the end of the Ukraine war. I mean, you know, Trump is moving every day. I'm sure he and Elon Musk are thinking through the nature of the commission Musk will head up to profoundly change the domestic government. And so, I mean, I think Trump will have done more between now and getting sworn in than probably any president in history.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Sean's point about how it's not a back-to-back term. So he had 4 years to think about it. He's got in Susie someone who's a great implementer. He knows what he wants to do. And the Democrats, of course, are divided and dispirited. And some of them are going to want to work with him because they think it's the right thing to do for the country and politically. So he's in a very, very strong position and coming in January. Mr. Speaker, thanks for joining us.
All right. I love Tom Homan as the
media
czar.
Is a thing of beauty. It's truly beautiful. Last month, he was interviewed by 60 Minutes. Watch.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there's. Families can be deported together.
Amazing. In 2019, Homan took part in a hearing on Capitol Hill. It's so good. About the Trump administration's border policies. He was accused by Democratic progressive congressmen of not caring about migrant children because of the color of their skin.
Do you understand that the consequences of separation of many children will be lifelong trauma and carried across generations? Have we not learned from the internment of Japanese Americans? Mr. Homan, I'm a father. Do you have children? How can you possibly allow this to happen under your watch? Do you not care? Is it because these children don't look like children that are around you? I don't get it. Have you ever held a deceased child in your arms?
First of all, your comments are disgusting. I've served my country.
I've
served my country for 34 years.
I find your comments
This is out of
disgusting
control.
as well.
I've served my country for 34 years. And yes, I held a 5-year-old boy in my arms in back of that tractor trailer. I knelt down beside him and said a prayer for him because I knew what his last 30 minutes of his life were like. And I had a 5-year-old son at the time. What I've been trying to do my 34 years serving my nation is to save lives. So for you to sit there and insult my integrity and my love for my country and for children, that's why this whole thing needs to be fixed. And you're the member of Congress.
We agree on that.
Fix it. If you want to legalize illegal immigration, good luck with that, because it's going to get a hell of a lot worse on that border. If you say, okay, from now on, there will be no consequence, no deterrence. It's not illegal to come to this country illegally. More families will come. 31% women will be raped. More children would die. We're a nation of laws. If you don't like it, sir, change it. You're the legislator. I'm the executive branch, and I've served my country honorably for 34 years. And I will not sit here and have anybody say that I don't care about children because you're not the same color as my children.
He is amazing. This guy's incredible. We looked into that story he referenced of the 5-year-old boy that he was talking about that he did hold in his arms. It happened back in 2003. The boy died along with 19 others after being crammed into a tractor trailer with nearly 70 other migrants in total.
Wow, I remember that day. All right, this is a story that the New York Times and other news media told us was disinformation, that FEMA was deliberately withholding help for people who had Trump signs on their front yard.
About the FEMA story. We got to talk about the FEMA story that the Daily Wire broke, that there had been a rumor circulating in the wake of the hurricane in Florida that FEMA had been playing politics and was helping areas that were friendlier to Democrats than to Republicans.
Right.
And there was disgust, absolute disgust and horror at the very suggestion of FEMA's politicization. Well, the Daily Wire found out that a FEMA supervisor somewhere in Florida named Marnie Washington issued a memo. It's on paper. It's in an email that says, don't go to a house that has a Trump sign in front of it. She was fired on FEMA, acknowledged that this had happened, and she was fired on Friday.
After a bit of a delay, I might add. At first, they're like, we will deal with this sternly. And then the pressure, I think, built enough. And the head of FEMA was summoned to come appear before Congress. And then she was fired.
Well, it's no joke, by the way, because, I mean, she could be liable for
potentially
it's not just that this is a criminal act to interfere with the distribution of federal emergency aid is not like is not a political, you just shouldn't do that. Like there may be criminal sanction there.
Well,
and anyway, the Daily Wire.
Imagine a Trump FEMA agent
oh my God.
saying, if you have a Black Lives Matter sign in your yard, we will not give you aid. Well, imagine that story. That's what's happened.
The story is also one of the great sort of political upendings of a attempt, to characterize something on the part of the government, because Democrats had no problem talking about how DeSantis was politicizing aid and help, wouldn't take Kamala Harris's phone call. Why is he playing politics at a time of emergency? And then here you go. It fits a pattern that we've seen over the past year.
It is part of why every 3 days or 2 days, there's a story that will demonstrate that you can't trust the media's reporting on anything. The DeSantis thing, not only about Kamala and not being nice to Kamala, back in 2021, 60 Minutes did this absolutely outrageous story, untrue story about how DeSantis was preventing the distribution of the COVID vaccine to public supermarkets in areas where Democrats voted.
And meanwhile, in my city, they were literally distributing it by race. They were breaking federal law and distributing the vaccine by race.
Right. That was a 60 Minutes story. This story that started getting floated, we only read about because of the denunciations of the story. Like that in the mainstream media, the story was surfaced to denounce the misinformation and conspiracy theorizing that was supposedly going on in Florida. And they are just going to, these people are just going to feed this beast, and they are committing harakiri they are killing themselves with the misinformation that they are spreading. And for example, just to, again, like put everything together, the recess appointment stuff is politically problematic in my view, and I'm upset if it's going to be that Trump is trying to do something to get somebody in that I don't like, okay? The recess appointment is in the Constitution. You can't tell me that he's a fascist for attempting to use a constitutional instrument, even if it's not exactly the way the founders intended, because the founders did not appreciate or understand what the modern, the structure of modern government and stuff like that. So
think in all caps like Trump does.
All right. Here's a related point. It came from 3 weeks ago. Michael Duran on Israel. We're looking at pictures of Israel.
Those of you who are eager for more. Okay. The Americans, the Biden administration, long ago accepted Hamas as a continued major political actor in Gaza. They're not, the Israeli goal is to eliminate them as the major political actor. That is not an American policy goal. It's a stated goal. They make this, they have this rhetoric about a revitalized Palestinian Authority taking over. But when you look at what their concrete plans are, it becomes very clear that what they're really talking about is a situation like you have in Lebanon, where you have the facade, the Potemkin Lebanese government, behind which is the real power, Hezbollah. And so what they want to do in Gaza is create the facade Palestinian Authority, behind which is the real power, Hamas. And this is a serious disagreement between the Israelis and the Americans. The Israelis will win in the long run because it's an existential question for them, and they're really serious about destroying Hamas. But in the medium term, there's going to be a lot of friction there. And I have one more point on this, Gadi. I have it on pretty good authority that and we need to watch this. The Biden administration has some surprises planned for Israel for after the election, and this is whether they win or they don't win. Those they're gonna give a big kick to Netanyahu, to his groin as they after the election. Obama did, like Obama did, and in fact, there are two possibilities that they could do both of them. One is to recognize a Palestinian state, and the second is a UN resolution that will call for an immediate cessation of hostilities and a withdrawal of forces. And that will be...
So Bibi Netanyahu is in a very difficult position, because if he does what the Americans want, he will no longer be prime minister of Israel. He'll be overthrown. On the other hand, he must maintain American support. So he has to thread an impossible line whereby he cannot afford to say publicly what's really going on, what his real plans are, because if he said honestly and openly what he intends on doing and what he is doing, then he would alienate either the Americans or his own support in parliament, and he would be removed as prime minister. And if there's another prime minister in Israel, he's not going to be more moderate than Bibi. He's going to be more hawkish than Bibi Netanyahu. Right, so I just read a lot of Trump critical articles today, and it helped me to clarify not just my hopes for the new Trump administration, but also my fears. For some context, this is what I've been reading. I can't believe this, but that neocon, Max Boot, Washington Post columnist, the never Trumper, he has published the definitive Ronald Reagan biography. So you want to read the definitive Ronald Reagan biography? It's by Max Boot, and it's really good. And here's just a little excerpt from this biography. And it talks about how Ronald Reagan developed a winning sense of humor. He'd become one of the best joke tellers ever to become president. But he was always a stranger to irony and sarcasm. Hurtful humor was as alien to his nature as disillusionment and self-awareness. As his first wife, Jane Wyman, said, he has fun without hurt feelings. And that was just as well for the standpoint of his future political career. Politicians such as John McCain, Bob Dole, and Mo Udall, whose wit is too cutting and who are too apt to puncture their own or others' pieties and pretensions, seldom get elected to the nation's highest office. But what about Donald Trump? I think Donald Trump has a particularly cutting wit. I don't think John McCain, Bob Dole, and Mo Udall had a wit that was more cutting than Donald Trump. So I don't think this applies to Trump. Few people would buy a political platform or any other product from a salesman who is less than entirely, wholeheartedly, unreservedly, and unironically convinced of its superior virtues. And Reagan always was, whether he was promoting school spirit in his teenage years or tax cuts in his senior years. His beliefs changed over the years, but his devotion to them remained steadfast. He was, from the start, a true believer, and not just in Christianity. And I was thinking about Bob Woodward's latest book called War. And this is how Bob Woodward concludes his book. Donald Trump is not only the wrong man for the presidency, so he released this book about a month before the election. He is unfit to lead the country. Trump was far worse than Richard Nixon, the provably criminal president. Trump governed by fear and rage and indifference to the public and national interest. Trump was the most reckless and impulsive president in American history and is demonstrating this very same character as a presidential candidate in 2024. So America clearly did not listen to Bob Woodward. And this is Woodward's summation of the current team in the White House. I believe that President Biden and his foreign policy team will be studied in history as an example of steady and purposeful leadership. So I support Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump, but I recognize he is deeply flawed. And the world around us is far more complex than I can possibly understand. America over the next 4 years will surely enter into certain situations where there will be certain events where the instincts of Donald Trump and the Republicans are not well suited to mastering these events. For example, with regard to COVID, the Republicans and Donald Trump did not usually have the most useful instincts. All right, generally the public health, big government response was more effective in the first few weeks of COVID anyway. So here are my fears about the new Trump administration. My hopes are that they crack down on immigration. Right, cracking down on immigration is more important to me than anything else. And I also hope that they will keep America out of forever wars. And I hope that they will reshape America's trade policy in the interest of Americans. But as for my fears about the new Trump administration, I fear that it will be characterized by incompetence, corruption, and carelessness. Right? I fear that Donald Trump is not particularly good at running things, and I fear that he's not much interested in governing. And so here are some lefties where I think they're overstating the case, but I think they're making good points. One says, this is the end of the regulatory state. Elon Musk and the tech billionaires got what they wanted. All the non-military three-letter agencies will be hollowed out. The SEC and the FTC won't have the capacity to monitor financial crimes. I think this is overstated, but that there's a core truth here that when Donald Trump prioritizes loyalty for his new regime, that this might come at the expense of competence. The DOJ, the EPA, HHS, Health and Human Services, will be run by political appointees. Well, they're always run by political appointees whose sole charge is to reward Trump allies and punish Trump critics. I do not believe that. I don't believe that will be their sole charge. But I am worried about corruption and incompetence. The tech billionaires are going to start behaving like courtiers, where they flatter Trump to get what they want. There will be a parade of corruption and incompetence scandals. This is my fear for the Trump administration. I do expect that there will be a parade of corruption and incompetence scandals that will stagger the mind and be worse than the first term. Now, I support the idea of Donald Trump replacing thousands of veteran civil servants with his own people. I support that. I have hopes for that. But I fear that Trump will too often value loyalty over competence. So we've got another lefty, Don Moynihan, writing, Trump will reinstate Schedule F, the executive order that will allow him to reclassify federal civil servants to be political appointees and then to fire them. Trump cares intensely about controlling both his own appointees and the bureaucracy, demanding loyalty from them and being able to dismiss them when that loyalty is not shown. His disdain for the administrative state is both deep and personal, not abstract or rhetorical. As long as they are competent, that's my main concern. The number of appointees will be proportionally higher in agencies that are liberal. Think HHS, Health and Human Services, education, and regulatory agencies. I think that's probably for the good, and lower in agencies that are more conservative, such as Customs and Border Patrol. I expect that a second Trump term will enable him to achieve more of his goals. I believe that. I think Trump will get more done in the second term, and I think that's good overall. But here's this, I think, a valid centrist and leftist concern. Will this result in worse public services? Will there be a general gutting of regulation? I would like some pruning of regulation. I would like some deregulation, but it must be prudent pruning. Prudent pruning, not just wholesale. Trump appears to enjoy the chaos and appears to have little interest in governing. I'm concerned about that. Trump will bring a new era of corruption to government, which will largely go unpunished. I'm concerned about that. A feature of Trump's presidency is that he has not abided by norms to reduce conflicts of interest between his public and private roles. I think that's a fair critique. He has more business interests than he had in his first term, notably in social media and crypto, that foreign governments can use to curry his favor or threaten his net worth. The potential for corruption goes far beyond Trump and can take different forms. Trump will engage in a mass pardon of people who broke the law to serve him, including those who attacked Congress on January 6th. As long as he does not pardon those who attack police officers, right? If they were not committing any violence and no destruction, that they were simply trespassing, then they've suffered enough from my perspective. Huge proportion of federal money goes through the contracting process. The chances that a lot of federal dollars will now go to Trump supporters has increased. I think that's a valid concern. Elon Musk faces regulatory oversight of his businesses from the federal government, and he benefits from federal contracts. Giving Musk oversight of those agencies as an efficiency czar generates even bigger conflicts of interest than those of Trump. Maybe that Musk loses interest in this role, but even having some sort of advisory role allows him to pick up the phone, make suggestions about which regulators should be fired. Other major donors are in the same position. All of this, featuring quid pro quo, exchange of money, influence of power, clear conflicts of interest, satisfies what most people understand to be corruption. We will see a decline in competence. We will see an increase in turnover in federal agencies. If you think those employees who leave are incompetent, that is good news. That is largely not going to be the case. So a lot of institutional memory will walk out the door. It will be harder to attract new hires to replace those leaving, at least those with a desire to serve the public. Right? The human capital skills of government will decline. We'll see a decline in the quality of public services. We'll see a decline in quality of services in public health, workplace safety, and the environment. Yeah, I think these are valid concerns. And there's one book that I'd recommend that best explains this. It's called The Fifth Risk, came out in 2018 by Michael Lewis. And Michael Lewis went in and just investigated 3 obscure government agencies, the Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Commerce. And Republicans and Rick Perry wanted to abolish the Department of Energy. What does the Department of Energy do? But one of the things that they do is protect nuclear waste, right? You want to be really careful with regard to nuclear waste. Agriculture is all about food safety. Predicting the weather is part of the Commerce Department. That's a pretty vital government function. And all the private apps that you use for weather prediction, they're all based on government satellites. So you have this former investment banker with expertise in the energy sector who was cajoled by Barack Obama to go to work for the energy department. And he was incredibly impressed. And his job there was risk assessment, right? And at the Department of Energy, among the things that they do are look to prevent dirty bombs from exploding at the Super Bowl. They track nuclear weapons so they don't get lost or damaged, all right? They're called broken arrows. They prevent plutonium waste at the government facilities from leaking into rivers, right? So the top 5 risks, right? The first 4 are predictable: broken arrows, North Korea, Iran, maintaining agreements with Iran to prevent it from building a nuclear bomb. protecting the electrical grid from cyber terrorism. And the fifth risk, right, program management. That's the title of the book, the fifth risk, program management. So if Donald Trump so prioritizes loyalty that we attract less competent people in key government positions, that's a problem, right? Program management. The risk a society runs when it falls into the habit of responding to long-term risks with short-term solutions. Program management is the existential threat that you never even imagine as a risk. It is the innovation that never occurs. It's the knowledge that is never created because you have ceased to lay the groundwork for it. It is what you never learn that might have saved you from some kind of epic disaster. And I think that's a valid concern.
Where there's Chol Yisrael. So he was not Chol Yisrael. So now Jack says the Satmar Rebbe, Trump promoted voting for Trump because Harris may pose danger for the Jews of Israel. Yes, that's Rav Arum, the Kiryas Yoel. It's, they will support Hochul. The local, they always support the one they think is going to win because of the goodies they get. So in New York, it's a blue state, so they're definitely going to support the Democrats, and they always have. And this is interesting that they went for Trump. Maybe it's because he got word that his brother, who he's enemies with, is going to come out in favor of Harris. So he always has to do everything the opposite of his brother. So that could be it. But I'm not really sure exactly why.
Okay, good dissection. The Satmar Rav came out, and the Satmar as a whole voted in lockstep for Donald Trump. Haven't said anything about Richard Spencer for years, it feels like. Here he is in conversation with Richard Hanania about 3 weeks ago. Oh, why am I not hearing this? Okay.
You're LARPing on behalf of like massively corrupt, boring, dumb, backward freaks. Yeah. Like it's not Napoleon or something who sort of, at least as we look back on him, carried with him some sort of spirit. It's your being backward is not an ideology. Being backward is not real resistance. Being backward is not a vision.
Yeah. I mean, Napoleon is cool. I mean, but do we want Napoleon was liberalism. I mean, I think Napoleon was the
spirit of the French Revolution in many ways, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So even the cool things that were like anti-liberal that you go back to are still sort of liberalism. Yeah, there might just be a sort of an arc of history here that it's maybe pointless to struggle against. Isn't that what you're doing sort of with Apollo? The Apollo? I don't know too much about this, but
you'll learn. Also, you'll get free coffee, signed coffee. But yeah, we're not. The discussion of something like economics or something is totally minuscule. We're trying to rethink Judaism, Christianity. We're trying to revive paganism. We're trying to I think to some degree uncover a sort of secret aspect of liberalism. So we're doing something differently, but we're not pretending. I mean, this is a sort of this is the beginning of something that is spiritual and philosophical and analytical. This isn't a we're not. Yeah. We're not pretending.
It's not the Quran. It's not going to come down and you're going to tell us all how to live. Yeah.
No. It's a sort of anti-cult in that sense. But we're going to tell you how to think and how to believe.
What's funny?
Yes.
What disagreement we have so many agreements with the Costco guy.
Oh my God. See that they make me an nihilist. Yeah, I think I tweeted. I was like, if I could press a button to create thermonuclear war, knowing that all humanity would die, but also the Costco family would be put to an end, I would press that button.
I'm like, I get what you're saying, but like, I don't have that reaction. It's like this fat guy with this fat little kid and his like cute little daughter, and they're eating chicken bakes.
But there's nothing else. This is what it is. I'm not against Costco in itself. Like if you want to go and save on chicken, good on you, right? It's
okay. See, this is someone who doesn't love his fellow citizens. This is someone who's not a nationalist, right? This is someone who's got a haughty aristocratic spirit, many advantages to that. But at core, Richard Spencer is just filled with contempt for his fellow Americans.
In that family, you see this vision of Nietzsche's last man. Remember, Fukuyama, just a little bit of an aside, Fukuyama, the full title of the book, not the article, is The End of History and the Last Man. So he thought the only real...
So a normal person looking at pictures of people eating fast food wouldn't have such a strong reaction, but Richard sees Nietzsche's last man.
Critique was Nietzschean, in fact. So what I see in that Costco family is a sort of the uber human becoming the subhuman, to use a sort of Nietzschean turn of phrase, in the sense of we are so fantastic at the supply chain and the internet and consumerism and all of it. We are so unbelievable at that we've created a debased peasant humanity that has no psyche beyond purchasing a wicked bulk.
And he gets this. These people are empty because he's seen a photo of them eating Costco chicken.
More Ravens deck chair at Costco or shoving their face with a double chunk chocolate cookie. There's nothing else. So we've all of and this is the way that Nietzsche would think of it. Like all that went into the creation of capitalism, like the scientific revolution, Plato, the history of Christianity and the Reformation, this whole history that we went through, and it produced this right now. And what is produced is subhuman. Isn't that not the greatest irony? And maybe yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. Doesn't that make you rethink?
And how does he know they're subhuman? Because he saw a photo of them. This is such an awful way to speak. It's such an awful perspective. It's such an unbelievable amount of contempt for people who aren't harming anyone.
Being a libertarian, when at the end of the day, it's going to produce a subhuman form of humanity. They might
eating fast food or eating Costco food does not make you subhuman. Being overweight does not make you subhuman. Oh, man. Ugh. I think that was just repellent. Okay. Let's get a little bit here from Michael Tracy talking with Richard.
But he went a whole thing about how, Kamala's a woman. Doesn't really think a woman should be in power. Didn't think that she could withstand the pressures of the office or deal with foreign leaders.
Okay.
And look, if you want to call that sexism, quote unquote, okay, but I do think.
Right, this is Michael Tracy talking about his conversations with Trump voters, and he makes the point that if Trump had a better ground game, he would have gotten thousands of more people to the polls, because Michael Tracy encountered so many soft Trump voters who weren't going to bother to vote. And for everyone who says, I don't want to vote for a woman, right, I know plenty of people who would prefer to vote for a woman. Many women and some men would prefer to vote for a woman.
A lot of voters, including some women voters themselves, who I've also, anecdotally spoken to, they don't see the proper role. They don't think it's smart to have a woman as president, and nobody thinks that about a man, right? So you would expect that to be, because every president's been a man, right? So you'd expect that to potentially be a disadvantage for female candidates, but Democrats insist on nominating them twice against Trump, and the one time they nominated a just generic male, they won.
Yeah. Now, I don't think Biden would have won this time. I think he was polling worse than Kamala. I think people rightly saw that he was out of it. So yes, but you're right. Sexism is real, Michael. I mean, you sound like woke, but it's true.
One woman said, "Oh, to fight fascism and racism. That's why she voted for Kamala Harris." Or one of the few final people that I talked to said she voted for Kamala Harris because I'm a woman, and that's the only point. Or somebody mentioned, much to my surprise, January 6th. He said, "I can't, how dare a presidential candidate stand idly by while the Capitol is ransacked?" Whereas Republicans were much more likely to cite something concrete or tangible, like, say, my economic conditions are worse now than they were under Trump. Or one guy said to me, I don't like that the Democrats are sending our taxpayer money to Ukraine. Or some, people will make actual policy arguments, or more policy-oriented arguments than the Democrats would. And I think that so limited the Democratic potential coalition, because it's kind of constrained their ability to make broader-based appeals. I mean, not everybody cares about the abstraction of democracy. Yeah, the most activated base voters do. But in order to appeal to people who are infrequent voters or don't pay that much attention to politics, I don't know.
And this was recorded on the night of the election when it became evident that Trump was going to win.
The January 6th stuff, really? Liz Cheney? This campaign was just absurd, and maybe it was kind of flawed.
I have great respect for Michael Tracy. I have little respect for Richard Hanania, but I also recognize that sometimes Richard will say something interesting.
Fatally flawed from the outset, and Biden staying in the race before a primary could be held just kind of rendered the whole thing hurt. But still, I mean, it's confounding that Democrats can shoot themselves in the foot this way.
So, there's nothing necessarily illegitimate about that. Like when David Duke ran for governor of Louisiana,
Yeah, I briefly mentioned this when we began to stream earlier and then got rudely cut off because you had to go jump on the Destiny stream, which I'm sure was fascinating for you.
Well, they kicked me off after like 10 minutes. I thought it was going to be on for longer, so I was like, why did I leave Michael?
But one thing that I had partially said before was it's sort of depressing how predictable a voter's vote is just based on their physical appearance. Like more than 9 times out of 10, I could, going around to a bunch of different municipalities today in like Southeast Pennsylvania, I would know by looking at someone who they had voted for. And I, every now and then you can get surprised. Every once in a while there's an exception to the rule. But I did find it somewhat depressing how predictable it was. I think that you don't want to think that physicality is so determinative, and people were making the same comment because they, were making, I think, meanly ridiculing some of the Kamala voters who I did a little vignette on today. I mean, I felt bad. I mean, they all gave me their consent, obviously, to interview them and take their photo, but like they just got viciously slimed by people. And I say that because, a perception that I developed was it consolidated into a doubt that enough people within the archetype of a Kamala voter actually existed to enable her to be victorious.
Yeah, I like that picture of that guy, that RFK Tulsi guy who I insulted, not for his looks, so I insulted for him for being an RFK fan. That guy looks just like every other guy.
If that guy is an instant Trump voter, that seems like, victory is pretty clear.
There is like,
because that guy would not have been an instant John McCain voter. That guy might have been more likely to be an instant Obama voter.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, Trump is remarkable. Like the RFK thing, the RFK thing, like it just shows like he's got like the instinct. Because
this is something that I would like to see academic investigation on, the link between physiognomy and people's politics, people's proclivity to commit crimes such as murder.
This guy had like, a couple percent of the population, and he went all in on him. And like I see like RFK signs. I mean, like it actually like moves some people. Right. Probably could have been in government. I don't know. She's sort of lost no matter what. I'd say she lost. I think she could have had a government position. She could have been in the cabinet or something.
Man on earth right now, even happier than Trump.
Who?
You know who I think is the happiest man on earth right now, even happier than Trump?
Who?
J.D. Vance. I've never seen someone more ebullient about their fortune, about how fortuitous their chances are, than when I saw him like floating on air at the Republican convention. He seems like he's like on a hero's journey, and I'm sure he's I think he's probably happier than Trump himself, because now he's basically a shoo-in probably for a future Republican nomination. Let's not get our
let's ask someone this. Ron DeSantis, good night or bad night?
Ambivalent.
I think he has a good. I think it's a bad night, because I think if Trump lost, he'd be in good position, and Vance would be diminished. But now.
Okay, I love those observations there from Michael Tracy, but I didn't get anything from Richard Hanania. Just didn't seem to move the needle forward. Right. Here's a powerful way of understanding this election. Right, it's the institutions, stupid, and it's from a long essay by political scientist Douglas Ollivant. Oh, he's a retired fellow national security professional, former West Point professor. He's center left. And he begins his essay with a Saturday Night Live sketch, Black Jeopardy. And it played in November of 2016. Tom Hanks plays Doug, a MAGA hat-wearing and very white rural American man. And as the sketch goes on, Doug shocks the host and the contestants of Black Jeopardy by consistently having the correct responses. Doug convincingly illustrates the deep commonalities that he, representing the rural white underclass, has with the contestants from the urban black underclass. Right? They share a distrust of institutions. The questions cover violations of privacy, election fixing, suspicion of the government, the informal economy, and a preference for lottery scratch cards rather than contributing to a 401k. So this sketch prepares us in a way that no essay could for the realignment that we are seeing in American politics. The political class has been in a mad scramble to try to explain the Trump phenomenon, what it means, how it came about. the best way to understand the realignment is by observing how Americans individually and as groups think about their relationships to major American institutions. The Democrats have become the party of institutions. The Republicans exist in a realm somewhere between suspicion of and outright hostility to our leading institutions. So I am in the skeptical realm. Right? I would not say that I'm hostile to America's institutions, but this simple litmus test is our most salient political divides. Right? And by institutions, I mean the main power centers in America. You've got media, you've got academia, the various branches of the executive branch. You've got large firms such as big law, tech firms, big pharma, big agriculture, finance, banks, the military-industrial complex, which retains some Republican ties. Right, the military and law enforcement are the exceptions. So are these institutions working for you? Are you benefiting from these institutions in a way that you can see and feel? Do you trust these institutions independent of whether you are getting a good deal from them? Right, if the institutions are benefiting you and you believe in them, you are likely a Democrat. If the institutions are not serving you well and therefore you have lost faith in them, you are likely a Republican. And this is a dramatic change over the past 40 years. It used to be that it was Republicans who primarily aligned with the institutions, and Democrats would have rage against the machine. So Biden contributions came from, in order, professors, social workers, therapists, lawyers, librarians, deans, scientists, teachers, doctors, pharmacists, designers, bankers, IT professionals, finance professionals, nurses, accountants, engineers, CEOs. Contributors to the Trump campaign, in order, housewives, the disabled, carpenters, electricians, truckers, mechanics, plumbers, builders, police, drivers, construction and maintenance workers. Right? We're mainly talking about groups outside of our largest institutions, right? We're talking about people in trade, people working at home, manual laborers, hourly workers, right? This is in large part an upper middle class versus lower middle class, right? You see salaried professionals arrayed against hourly blue collar workers. It's harder and harder now to earn a respectable middle-class salary from a manual trade. So the new right questions the media. It's an institution. The new right questions the utility of the professional government bureaucracy. It's one that is overwhelmingly filled with Democratic partisans that resist the policies of the new right. Why is the new right so hostile to established higher education? Why is the new right so deeply suspicious of our financial system, of the judicial establishment? Right? The new right is moving into and taking over the Republican Party. And the new right has no ties to our leading institutions. Therefore, it carries a deep suspicion of our leading institutions. Our elites, usually well-educated with a lot of financial resources, are quite comfortable with our institutions. They've made comfortable lives with our institutions. So small business owners, heirs of family car dealerships, ranchers, builders, right? They may be outside these institutions, and their suspicion of institutions is not irrational. So how did Trump cause this bifurcation? Or did this bifurcation cause Trump? Probably both. But Trump recognized this divide and that this demographic, suspicious of institutions, was going to grow in size as a voting bloc as income inequality accelerated. So we have a New York property developer who emerges as the spokesman for this new disempowered class. Right? Land developers are frequently seen as disreputable. So we have a president who's able to speak to the masses in their own dialect, who was perfected in reality TV, developed on the margins of professional wrestling and on construction sites throughout New York and New Jersey. And he's brought into his team Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, who are defined by their opposition to mainstream institutions, food and pharma, In Kennedy's case, the defense industrial complex and transgenderism in the second place. So what's all this talk about threat to democracy? It's a trope of those in the institutions that Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. What they mean is that Donald Trump is a threat to the institutions, which the elite see as a bulwark of our democracy. But for the new right, the threat to democracy comes from the institutions. They are the problem. President Trump's defenders turn his opponent's rhetoric on its head. They reply to Democrats that while Trump is indeed a threat to their democracy, the one that serves their interests, the interests of Democratic partisans, he is good for the larger democracy. All right, let's get Elliott Blatt back into the show. Mr. Blatt, what's going on, sir?
Oh, blessings, bro. Sorry for the quick turnaround on the show, the call-ins, but it's been an exciting couple of days, don't you think?
Yes, loving it, bro.
It's just too much.
Yeah, too much winning.
Nectar. It's too much winning. It's too much winning. It's too much nectar. It's too much keynote. It's just too much. And I'm loving our new media environment. How about you?
Yes. Yeah, it's fun watching the news again.
It is. And every day there's some new little gossip drama that you get to pay attention to. In addition to the regular sort of serious news, there's this. It's constant. It's winning. It's the river of winning. It's an ocean of winning, and we just get to get wet and submerge ourselves in winning.
And so many good memes and jokes online. It's great.
It's endless. It's endless. And each day, it's just another wave. This is why we suffered for so long, Lucas, to enjoy these salad days.
I love seeing all the football players and hot chicks and everyone imitating Donald Trump's dance.
Yeah. So now in retrospect, does Trump's dance routine make more sense? Do you think he knew at that point? He wouldn't have been dancing if he thought it were in doubt, right?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, he's so inscrutable. There's this sort of inscrutable dimension to Trump that's it adds to the entertainment value. I don't know. Yeah, it's things have been coming up roses for me lately, bro. I don't know. It's you go through periods of life and you're always on the losing half.
Yeah.
But then sometimes you're on the winning half, and there's no explanation for suddenly why you're on the winning half of the break, and you don't trust it. There's this transition period. Pardon the pun. So I'm in that particular transition phase right now.
Right. I remember we talked before the election how you didn't want to feel too happy about the election. You didn't want to get too high. You wanted to protect yourself in case there was a letdown.
Yeah, I'm afraid to win, bro. I'm afraid of hubris.
Yes, you're afraid of winning, bro.
The ghost of hubris haunts me. So I'm always just looking for neutrality, and I'm going to let victory take me by surprise. That's been my attitude lately. But we're in the victory phase. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, America is shifting. The world is shifting. The whole world is changing.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's you go against the wind for so long, you just assume the wind will always be against you. But suddenly the wind's at your back and you don't know how to adapt. That's how I'm feeling right now.
Have you seen any MAGA hats out in San Francisco?
Well, things aren't quite that good, bro. That'll be a cold day in hell, I'm afraid. I'm pretty sure I've never seen even one in 10 years. I've not seen one. Just to tell you where I am. Have you in LA?
No, I don't think I have.
No. No, we're on our own little island, grasping at the wreckage, just trying not to drown. You know, we've been so content for so long just to make do. So that, I don't. In a way, it's good because it's like, would you rather have modest expectations and never have the rug pulled versus to be, you know, consumed with hubris and arrogance and then to one day have the rug pulled from you?
I prefer this middle path that you feel all your emotions, you feel the giddy and the despair, and you also have a part of yourself that stays outside of the emotions and says, okay, I'm going through these emotions right now, but nothing is fixed in place, right? My emotions are going to change. So I do think that most people should experience the full range of their emotions, but just maintain a part of themselves that is observing what's going on, not just surrendering.
Yeah, I've taken the 40 admonishment to just be a notch above boredom, like really reduce my expectations, because I'm just so accustomed to having my exalted, my giddiness being pulled out from underneath me. So it's just been ingrained into me not to get ahead of my skis, as the saying goes. Speaking of getting ahead of one's skis, have you been following this Nick Fuentes drama?
Yeah, I was just going to talk to you about it, but let me just give one more thought. So for some people, extreme emotions are more damaging or put them at far more risk. So it's very easy to become haughty and obnoxious. And if giving into your emotions is going to put you in danger or just put a predisposition on your personality that alienates you from other people, then don't do it. Other people are better able to handle strong emotions. And so it depends. It's got to be individual. Some people really need to tamp their emotions down. I'd hope that most people can allow them to flow naturally while just keeping an eye on things. So the Nick Fuentes story, some woman who was harassing him decided to come to his door and ring his doorbell. And Nick comes charging out and he sprays the woman who's apparently been harassing him. So he has a history with this woman, and he pushes her down the stairs and grabs her phone. And so here's the story. Yesterday afternoon, Marla Rose, a 57-year-old pro-Palestinian Jewish feminist, went to the house of Nick Fuentes, a 26-year-old prominent never Trumper. She claims she went to the house to investigate whether individuals had actually mailed boxes of dog poo and tampons to Fuentes. While filming outside, another woman in a car encouraged Ms. Rose to ring the doorbell. She claims that upon ringing the bell, Fuentes sprayed her with pepper spray, pushed her down the stairs, took her phone. The woman in the car called 911. Police showed up. No charges were filed. Miss Rose indicates that she plans to press charges. And my reaction is, one, she was really stupid. You don't show up on someone's doorstep because you get shot. This is America. It's an incredibly dangerous thing to do. She's lucky that she only suffered what she did. And Nick Fuentes, from these reports, did not act in a wise way. He has laid himself wide open to civil litigation and possibly criminal charges. So I think both of them were in the wrong. What's your perspective?
Well, it's funny you say that because just maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days ago, so I live on the 3rd floor, and the woman on the 2nd floor had mistakenly climbed too many flights of stairs, and I don't lock my door, and I happened to be right at the door at the moment, and so I sort of, as she was opening my door, I was sort of opening my door, and then she came charging in to my apartment thinking it was her apartment.
Oh my God.
And like, so
was she hot? Was she attractive?
She was very attractive, dude. Very
highly fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what's really happening. You know, you go through. I'm going through
Yeah.
the psychological adjustment period, and I'm going. So I was shocked. She was shocked simultaneously, and then we both sort of laughed, and we sort of immediately put together what had happened. You know, and I never felt threatened. She never felt threatened. It was just an amusing moment.
But if she was a young black man,
yeah, and I had been armed. Who knows
Yeah.
what would have happened, bro?
exactly.
And
And I mean, that happens. People get shot and killed all the time because they just knock on the wrong door.
Yeah. I thought about this particular scenario, and like, there's a certain serendipity that's going on with me in my personal life, and then the news at large. But I thought about the Fuentes situation, and to me, what came to mind was Fuentes, you know, had recently just come out with this very viral tweet about, you know, we men own your bodies and so forth, and it was a very viral tweet. It was very bombastic. It was meant to be antagonistic, but then it provoked this reaction, you know, on the part of this woman. And like it or not, you know, Nick may be on the other side of some legal proceedings, you know?
Yes.
And whether they're justified or not, there's certainly an annoyance. They're certainly going to eat into your enjoyment of life, having these types of things hang over your head. And this, to me, represents sort of the price of bombast.
Yeah.
You know, it's very emotionally satisfying to engage in it,
Yeah.
but it provokes reactions, and those reactions, even if they're not justified, they can eat into your enjoyment of life. And it just, you know, it just sort of re-emphasizes the point about, you know, living one notch above boredom rather than seeking these radical, attention-grabbing, emotionally satisfying headlines. You know, the price may not be worth paying for the actual practical benefit that they accrue to you.
And again, it depends on the person. So Ronald Reagan didn't live one notch above boredom. He had a very blessed, you know, lucky life, highly fulfilling life. For the advice comes from 12-step, and so rather than cracking out, rather than giving in to your addiction, it's better to live a notch or two above boredom. That doesn't mean that's the best advice for everyone, but for some people, if you can't control yourself, then and living a notch above boredom helps you to control yourself, then that's a good strategy. But there's a huge price to pay for provocation. I remember I interviewed. Do you remember the journalist Michael Fumento? He wrote a book called The Myth of Heterosexual AIDS in the 1980s. He did a lot of innovative science journalism. Anyway, he burned his bridges with everyone who was publishing, almost everyone who was publishing him, and he ended up living in Colombia because it was cheap. And I did an interview with him. I don't recall if he was living in Colombia at the time we did the interview, but he just trashed Colombia, just absolutely trashed it. And then he went back and he ended up in a Colombian prison. And they read his interview with me where he was just trashing Colombia, and it did not make for a happy prison stay for him. So
yeah. Well, it goes to my point. Like, the dramatic, the bombastic is always at arm's length, right? And
well, not many people can pull it off. Some people can, like Howard Stern, right? He successfully pulled off the bombastic.
Yeah. True enough, it makes you, I guess it's sort of like Trump. Like, Trump has this incredibly exaggerated personality, you know?
Yeah. Most people could not pull that off.
Yeah. And then in turn, though, this exaggerated personality provokes intense enemies, right?
Yeah.
It's fuel to the fire of your enemies. And so, yes, you get the, you get the pleasure and the privilege of being this bombastic, but it comes at a huge cost. And the cost isn't, unless you're like super well situated, that cost can consume you and take you down.
Yeah,
And
not many people can handle what Donald Trump has been through.
no, right.
Much of it self-caused.
But he was millimeters from death, bro.
Yeah.
And it just shows me, like, I don't know, like I have like this, personally speaking, like I have an attraction to the dramatic and the attention getting,
Yeah.
I'm very aware of this. But I'm also at the same time very aware of its risks. And this awareness just came at the expense of just a lot of painful life lessons. And so, okay, here's the point. So let's consider the following personalities. So we got Donald Trump, Nick Fuentes, and Richard Spencer, right?
Yep.
All very flamboyant, dramatic personalities, but all of whom have paid huge prices for this. Some larger than others, but and the fourth was Ralph, Ethan Ralph, who apparently has taken another turn for the worse. And so potentially a common denominator in all of this is YouTube.
The e-personality.
The e-personality and how it necessitates, it's this war. What's the word? Not Cold War, but this escalating war for attention. And that once you're in this escalating war for attention, it's going to push you beyond the bounds of safety and put you in the center of real risk. And those risks, unfortunately, aren't apparent at the time when you're taking them. And so,
thousands of people have tried to do what Donald Trump, Richard Spencer, Nick Fuentes, Ralph have tried to do and have failed miserably and absolutely wrecked their lives. In many ways, Ralph, Nick, Richard, and Trump are the comparative winners compared to all the thousands and thousands of people who have just blown everything up from this strategy.
Yeah, but have they even won? Have, like in the case of Nick and Ralph, it's really hard to classify them as being winners, because who knows the litigation that at least Richard's been through, Ralph has been through. I don't know about Nick, and we all know about Trump. There's just such a psychic weight. Like even my own little experience with the law system this past year, which we've talked about, you can't like put a price on how much having stuff like that hanging over your head degrades from your life. Just saps the joy from your life.
Yeah.
And so the months that you have with that stuff hanging over your head, it's like being dead. It's like you'd rather be dead than just have this sort of dread and doom hanging over your life.
But how much are you just speaking from within your own personality? Because different personalities, different people will handle it very differently. All right. For normal people, being sued is a trauma. But for people like Donald Trump, who gets sued all the time, it's not the same level of trauma.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I'm certainly not cut out for being sued.
Yeah.
It does not roll off my back, bro. It's like, it's life-changing and altering and depressing and demoralizing and saps one's energy. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I have a similar attitude. I saw something funny. So, how did Kamala spend $1 billion on her campaign, raise $1 billion, and still end up in debt? Apparently, she spent $5 million paying Megan the Stallion, $3 million to Lizzo for an appearance, $1.8 million for Eminem, $1 million for Oprah to appear, and she paid 6 figures to appear on the Call Her Daddy podcast.
Just real judicious allocation of capital. That's so funny. It's the layers of humor. You can't even wrap your head around it. Like, and it's still, it makes me actually feel just a little bit sad for her, because I feel like part of me feels like she was like set up, like
yeah.
As soon as it became clear that Biden was not viable.
Yeah.
They needed a sacrificial lamb, and she was it. And I don't know how much that's true, but it feels that way. But in retrospect, her candidacy was just so comical,
Yeah.
Anyway.
She I mean, it's just so funny.
And the way, and then you get like all these sort of supplementary extra chapters. Like, how does the media come to terms with this?
Yeah.
Having carried water for her for so long, and now they have to realize that she potentially singularly is the reason why the Democrats have no branch of government under control.
Man, I mean, she can't buy love.
Yeah. But that's, it just, the phrase "go broke, go woke, go broke," but
yeah,
seems to have epitomized this to the max.
Ethan Ralph fell asleep on his arm while on Xanax, and now he has nerve damage.
I think he was. There's a video going around where he's like rubbing one out too.
Oh, I got to see that.
Have you had the pleasure of witnessing that?
No. The chat says Nick Fuentes was denied air travel. That's what Nick claimed. Turns out it was one airline, and it's because he called a stewardess a bunch of nasty names and acted out of control.
Yeah. Well, there are rumors floating about that Nick and his sort of immediate orbit have been partaking in the Bolivian marching powder.
Okay.
And that might explain, at least to me, some of his sort of exaggerated and unchecked outbursts on the internet.
I wonder if he's having sexual intercourse.
With women or men?
Either.
Unlikely, but I think the coca products are real. And I think this is sort of one of my sort of enduring theses, that cocaine is like the driver of all bad behavior across all times and all places. And it's become clear to me that people, it seems to be far more accepted than it was for me when I was growing up. Like, it seemed like there were, at least where I was growing up, there was firm guardrails about partaking in that. And now it just seems to be a rite of passage for nearly everybody, or at least everybody that has a live stream.
I guess most people who really get into live streaming, it's not because their real life is flourishing, right? It's because they feel more alive online while they're performing than going through real life. And so such personalities will be particularly prone to all sorts of self-destructive addictions.
Yeah. I think there's a tight correlation between political aspiration and cocaine use, because both contain within them a certain intensification of experience that is way beyond the humdrum. So anyone that's attracted to one is also attracted to the other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, the novel, the great story is unfolding. The narrative. I'm forgetting the name of the drug. What's it called? The brain drug.
Modafinil, Adderall.
No. The naturally occurring.
Not adrenaline.
Not adrenaline. The other one.
Yeah. Oh, where you going to fast? Dopamine.
Yes.
Yes.
The whole quest for like the ever flowing river of dopamine continues. That's all I can say.
So do you think Jimmy Carter feels blessed that he gets to see Donald Trump elected twice?
The poor bastard. He's such an innocuous guy at the end. I don't know. Is he alive still?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he voted.
Yeah. We're all the better for it. I don't know. I never had much against him or much for him. He was sort of I remember, being on the school bus as a child when Jimmy Carter was elected. And
I lost $5 when Reagan won in 1980. I mean, it was a stupid bet. I bet $5 that Carter would win.
Really?
Yeah.
So yeah, like so Carter was like what, 76? 76, these are just hazy memories for me, but basically I am, by the time I was fully conscious, Reagan was president. So my adolescence was consumed with Reagan, and it was
I was 14 when he was elected, so that's when I became particularly politically aware, and I very quickly jumped on the Reagan train, very enthused about him. That's why I'm so enjoying this Max Boot biography of Reagan. I can't believe Max Boot has written so far the definitive biography. It's 32 hours on Audible, and I just let it run all night. What's the first world event that you remember? I think the first world event that I remember is the Yom Kippur War, 1973. So I was 7.
My first world event was the Iranian hostage takeover of
1979. Yeah.
79. Yeah. That's when I started to understand that the world was far more complicated than it was presented to me in elementary school. So then, so I would say it was the hostage takeover.
So what are your hopes? What are your fears for the Trump administration? Like, what's your top priority? For me, it's immigration.
Oh, well, certainly immigration is an important thing, but I think Trump needs to, and we'll probably part ways on this one, but I think the actual vengeful Trump needs to come to the fore. The Trump feared by most histrionic liberal media personalities actually needs to manifest. Trump needs to punish all of those who have punished him, and he needs to restore, and this is, it perfectly coincides with his personal vengeance, but he needs to defend the institution of the presidency writ large. So I think he needs to go after all of his persecutors and punish them mercilessly. What do you think?
Well, again, I want him to be effective. So I want him to be judicious and effective. If this means reaching out, reach out. If this means compromising, compromising. If it means accepting 60% of something in some kind of bipartisan deal, rather than getting nothing, then do that. So you use good judgment. That there's a time to be cruel and there's a time to be kind.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of sort of gravitational bias or weight towards pulling towards consensus. But this is one of the few times that I think you need to eschew such notions of consensus and conciliation. And actually, you need to be feared. And Trump needs to demonstrate that, yes, you do this to me, I can do this to you, and it's not going to feel good. And he needs to restore the sort of awe and grandeur of the presidency that's been slowly but methodically abrogated by these gratuitous acts of lawfare.
Well, his appointments so far are great. Stephen Miller has an important role. Tom Homan sounds like a tough guy running as border czar. So I'm enjoying the direction.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think a lot of people are whispering the same things in his ears that I would be whispering. I think the Democrats, the liberals, are so back-footed and so taken by surprise, and they're so demoralized by this outcome that this, of all times, is the time to attack. You don't attack while your opponent is strong. You attack while your opponent is weak. And I'm hoping that, he takes lessons from the 48 Laws of Power, among other great works of political advice, and acts accordingly.
Yeah. What would you say is your attitude towards American institutions? Skeptical, hostile?
American institutions.
Right. The news media, academia, non-governmental organizations, health and human services.
Hostile. Absolutely hostile. Yeah. So this whole sort of creeping bureaucracy, this mediocritization of everything needs to be like rolled back to bare wood. It needs to be completely just eradicated and put in its place. And I think there's very few times where they're so weak right now that they would just have to endure what they must. And they're, so we need to get back to basics in a real way. And I think Trump has this narrow window of opportunity to bring that about. And I hope he does.
Okay, bro. Good to catch up with you.
All right. Blessings.
Blessings.
Right.
Okay, man.
Blessings.
Take care. Okay. All right. What else have I got lined up here to share with you? Psychax.
For all of these illnesses, diagnosis is primarily based on self-reported criteria, checklists of symptoms.
All right, he's talking about mental health diagnoses. All right. They're all self-reported.
This means that you could book a session with a doctor. Say you've had 5 of these 8 symptoms over the past month, which has caused you a lot of distress, and boom, you now have a mental illness. The upshot of this is that in the case of mental illness, it's functionally the patient who decides whether and to what extent he is sick. Can you imagine a medical system in which the patient tells the doctor that he has strep throat or pancreatic cancer or brain aneurysm, and that the doctor has no way to objectively confirm that assessment? And of course, if there were no way to objectively confirm the presence of these diseases, then there would also be no way to objectively confirm whether the diseases ever went away, would there? Like, pause this episode and
Yeah, psych hacks. Good point. All right,
You gotta
morning
go get
meeting.
voters behind you. I mean, to your point about Trump, the entire establishment was against him in 15 and 16, but he built up a following the old-fashioned way, and he kind of stormed the Capitol with the support of the people. Bad analogy, maybe, but I
think people. He didn't realize where he was going with that story. That's so good. Please enjoy it again.
To your point about Trump, the entire establishment was against him in 15 and 16, but he built up a following the old-fashioned way, and he kind of stormed the Capitol with the support of the people. Bad analogy, maybe, but
okay, that is rich. I love it. All right, how to get a handle on
They're
LS.
living at this person's house, this woman and her daughter, who, as I recall, is a widow. And Chaim gets involved with the girl.
And I think this is, oh.
And there's descriptions in the book. This is sort of thing that they'll censor in the Haredi version, but if you censor this, it's hard to know then how you have the whole dispute between the Navardiker and the Chazon Ish. So he describes how him and the girl, as I recall, she was a young widow, but they're living in the same house and they start kissing, and that's the description. It doesn't go any further than that, but and she comes on to him. It's sort of like Rav Yaakov Emden's cousin. He tells a story in his autobiography. That's my recollection. Yeah, she comes on to him, but they are participants in this, and every chance they get, they go together to kiss. And Chaim Grada realizes he has to remove himself from the situation, and people start to know, and it becomes the talk of the town. So it's a big problem, and he leaves the house. And just to go live on the street. He can't stay in the house because as long as he's in the house there, then there's the Yetzer Hara, and it can.
So Chaim Grada was raised religious. He went to an Orthodox series of yeshivas, Talmudic academies, and then he became secular and became a great novelist. And one of the things he wrote was a terrific novel called The Yeshiva.
Lead to disaster. So now we pick up then in the yeshiva. In volume 1, page 384. So the Chazon Ish finds out about this, and the Chazon Ish, and we know Chaim Grada was living with the Chazon Ish. According to this, if that's the story, how it happens, it would make sense. The Chazon Ish summons him. He knows him already, but Chaim Grada goes to the Chazon Ish, and he's living with him. And the Chazon Ish's idea is to try to get him to the straight and narrow by removing him from where he was. And now, in the story here, the Navardiker, remember Chaim Grada is also from Navard, studied Navardic. He goes to the Chazon Ish because the Navardiker is convinced that there will be no tshuva for Chaim Grada if he's living with the Chazon Ish. He has to come to Navardic, and Navardic will give him real tshuva.
So tshuva means the process of repentance, repenting for making out repeatedly with this young widow.
So they have a whole huge machlokas here, the Chazon Ish.
And machlokas means controversy. So it's a controversy between one approach to Torah, which is very Mussar-centered. Mussar is particularly strict, internal, taking an account of your soul, as opposed to just traditional Talmudic study. Mussar is the strict accounting of your soul.
The Chazon Ish's argument is that Chaim's going to study Torah full-time.
Right. So this is the basic traditional Orthodox Jewish response for a man who behaves badly. He just needs to study more Torah. Now, I believe that many people have addictions, and Torah is not going to help most people overcome their addictions. So you'll find all sorts of 12-step programs, such as in sexual addiction, where you've got yeshiva students who are going to yeshiva by day and then strip clubs by night. And no matter how much Torah they study, they still have an out-of-control sex addiction.
And that'll keep them the straight and narrow. So what does the...
So when an Orthodox rabbi diddles someone that he shouldn't diddle, traditionally he'd just be moved to another community, and the thinking of the other rabbis was he just needs to learn more Torah, that will help him overcome his lustful impulse?
The Navartikers say. He says that it's not.
So the Chazon Ish, yes, it was very much against Musa, the internal taking an account of your soul, and the Navartikers were very pro-Musa.
Going to work because you're not working. All you're doing is learning, but you're not working on his personality. You're not.
Now, neither approach is particularly effective for most people, right? Neither learning Talmud nor learning Musa is going to transform you internally if you have an addiction going on.
Working on uprooting his evil inclinations. For the Chazon Ish, we're going to learn, and that's enough. And the Navardiker says, he says to him, I can promise you this is temporary. It will only last as long as he considers it a great honor to be your pupil. The only reason he says he's here and that he ran away from the girl is because he thinks it's an honor to be with you. But once he gets used to you, he'll no longer have your image before his eyes during a moment of temptation. His hot blood won't calm down because his teacher is Rav Avram Shaya Kosover. Even if he becomes a diligent Ben Torah, he says the Talmud and its commentaries won't protect him from the Yetzer Hara.
So when I was under the sway of pornography, which was intermittent, like it would just sweep over me for a week or two, then it would kind of burn itself out. But sometimes when I was desirous of going to look at pornography, an image of my rabbi would come to my mind, and it reduced my enjoyment. And so one thing that a Jew who was raised religious and then became a poet, or it might have been something said that the Chazon Ish said to the Hayam Grada, you're never going to be able to enjoy your sin. After all the years you spent studying Torah with me, you're not going to be able to enjoy your sin. So the visage of my rabbi's face coming to my mind when I was seeking to enjoy some pornography, it did not enhance my enjoyment of pornography.
The Chazon Ish was saying, he's going to sit here and he's going to learn with me, and that's enough. And the Navardiker says that's not doing anything because the learning doesn't get to the, as we saw before, learning is just a mitzvah. Are you going to tell me that if you shake a lulav all day, it's going to help you with your Yetzer Hara? No, you need to work on Yira. You need to.
I had to stop shaking my lulav. Man, I was shaking my lulav way too much. Right, my life is much calmer now since I stopped shaking my lulav.
Work in the Navardic way. So the Chazon Ish. Now this is obviously the recreation, I believe, of a dispute. It's not. We're not supposed to take it word for word. And maybe there never was such a dispute. Maybe the Navardiker actually.
Oh, so I turned my life around. I stopped writing on the pornography industry. I reintegrated myself into the Orthodox community. I got an invite to a home that had used to host me and then stopped hosting me when my writing on the pornography industry became widely known, and then walked away from writing on the pornography industry, and it was Sukkot. I got an invite to a sukkah, seated next to an attractive young woman. I asked her, would you like to shake my lulav? And I never got invited back after that.
She never came to the Chazon Ish, and Chaim Grada is just portraying what each one of them thought, or what he heard later, why he made him. It was a mistake to go to the Chazon Ish, whatever. But in this story, the Chazon Ish replies, you're a Rosh Yeshiva, and you can't imagine that Torah study can save someone from the Yetzer Hara? That is not Musar, but just real Torah study. He says, the Chazon Ish.
So the Yetzer Hara is the lustful impulse.
Says the Gemara says, if you have the Yetzer Hara, drag it to the base medrash. He says that.
So the Gemara is the Talmud, the base medrash is the house of study, usually filled with Talmudic volumes and other volumes of Jewish law.
But when you learn Gemara, you imagine you're in Babylonia, sitting with the Gedolim there. And then Samach Atlas.
And the chat says the idea of learning Musa, learning Torah, to help alleviate the lustful impulses built around developing a disciplined life. But if you've got an addiction, right, the building the disciplined life and becoming more religious is not going to cut it. So another way of translating Musa, admonishment, right? It's a Jewish school of thought that places emphasis on taking extreme accountability for one's actions in a very exacting manner. It's a very harsh approach.
Barnaker replies and says, he says that no, it doesn't work because we.
Look, I only asked her to shake my lulav. I did not ask her to lick my etrog. God forbid I'd say such a thing.
Our matter. We're not like super tzaddikim. We're matter. Our body drags us down. Even the noblest Ben Torah. He says that a Torah scholar could be an evil genius. He can use pilpul to be matter every isser.
So pilpul is very tricky legal reasoning. Matter every isser means to permit everything that is forbidden. So I'm thinking about one acquaintance of mine. He's an Orthodox rabbi, and his nickname is Rabbi Loophole. So there have been one or two Jews who have used their brains to figure out more comfortable ways of getting around legal systems, both the religious Jewish traditional legal system and also some of the legal systems of the non-Jews.
When your lusts assail you, there's only one thing to do: study Musar. So in other words, Chaim should come with me because we know how to deal with this. And he says that.
And I recognize people are complex. I'm sure some people got help for their lustful impulse by studying Musa. Other people got help by studying Gemara. But there are an awful lot of rabbis out there who use their position to take advantage of other people sexually or financially. Plenty of rabbis are prone to addictions to alcohol and to gambling. So being an Orthodox Jew, being an Orthodox rabbi, being a student of Torah does not exempt you from human weaknesses.
The Chazon Ish laughs at this. He says that,
So we have leading Orthodox rabbis in Los Angeles who have been carrying on affairs for many, many years. And they tend to collect dirt on each other because they're constantly feuding with each other. And half the rabbis who conduct Orthodox conversions in Los Angeles are prone, when the woman is attractive, to hitting on her. And so Orthodox rabbis, they're not worse than other people. They're simply as prone to human weaknesses as everybody else. And when they accumulate some power and prestige, they are as vulnerable to abusing their power and prestige as plumbers and stand-up comics, right? They're not better. They're not worse. They just know more Torah.
Someone can also make believe they're a Navardiker and do all sorts.
So in my life experience, there's sometimes, probably half the time, there is a positive correlation I have noticed among people who learn Torah and becoming finer. And then about half the people I know who dramatically increase their Torah learning, there was no discernible increase in what's called menschlichkeit, in their human decency. So I'm sure there are some communities where 95% of people who seriously learn Torah have great midot, great moral character. I live in Los Angeles, so my experience is about half the people I know who seriously learn Torah seem to be morally improved by it, and the other half don't seem to be noticeably improved by it.
Sorts of sins.
So I'm thinking about one Gentile was very shocked that an Orthodox rabbi, ripped him off and stole thousands and upon thousands of dollars from me. Orthodox rabbi is very prominent on social media and has reinvented himself as a Torah influencer, and yet just routinely rips people off in business deals, and then occupies very high status positions in the community.
And then Chazon Ish says, we're talking about people in yeshivas. Everyone in yeshiva is going to go out and have to make a living and earn a livelihood. And
the word menuval, it means perverted. And I believe it was the Ramban who said you can keep all the laws of the Torah and still be a pervert. You can still be disgusting. So plenty of people are ostensibly fully observant of Jewish law. They outwardly present as observant of Jewish law, and their behavior is despicable. But I think most people expect that those who are religious and those who believe in God and those who believe in objective standards of morality, even if you don't believe in God, but somehow you still believe in objective morality, we do tend to expect a higher level of behavior from those people.
Do you think the Musar he learned in Navardic, 10 years, 20 years down the road when he's a balabus and he's supporting a family, you think that is going to save him from any?
All right, this is the Musar dispute, part 18, with Professor Mark Shapiro. He is a professor of modern Jewish studies at a Jesuit university in New Jersey. He got his PhD in Jewish studies from Harvard University.
Any Yetzer Hara that arises? He's not he's in a provincial town where no other people, just Hamonam, the masses. He's not surrounded by yeshiva students. Is he going to be saved from sin by remembering your sermons of 20 years before?
So this is one of my favorite YouTube channels. It's called Torah in Motion.
Chazon Ish thinks not. No, you need to have a Talmud Chacham, one who knows that he can go to the local base medrash and open up the Shulchan Aruch and learn Gemara, and that's good. What's going to keep him on the straight and narrow? In fact, he says he won't even need to run to the base medrash to open the Shulchan Aruch, because the Torah that he learned, and he became a Talmud Chacham, that's going to last him a long time, while the Musar schmoozes are going to extinguish. Because that's like a flame that goes up high and then is forgotten later. But if you give someone a strong background in Torah.
So traditional Jews who take in, say, a black gospel church service, even though that's forbidden under Jewish law, but sometimes even Orthodox Jews do things that are forbidden under Jewish law, their reaction to like these gospel Christian services is that it's like a hit of crack cocaine. Very different from the more low-key traditional Jewish service. Right? A church tends to be a much more otherworldly space than a synagogue. And the Hebrew name for synagogue is Beit Knesset, which means meeting place. Right? A synagogue is not called in Hebrew usually a Beit Tefillah, a house of prayer, or even a house of study. It's usually referred to as a Beit Knesset, meaning a meeting place.
Study that'll remain his whole life, and it goes on, and that's the dispute, and the Chazon Ish wins it. At least Chaim doesn't leave him. It remains with him. So that's really, I think, the upshot of the great dispute. One other point I'll mention. The best article, I believe, in English on the Chazon Ish, maybe in Hebrew also, is by Lawrence Kaplan. The title of the article is "The Chazon Ish, Haredi Critic of Traditional Orthodoxy." He discusses all the big points in the Chazon Ish, his Weltanschauung, his opposition to the Brisker method, his criticism of Musar, his leadership in the Haredi world, and Kaplan makes a connection between his opposition to the new analytic approach of Torah study, and also the Musarniks. And there's some interesting points, but this is just one thing I'll mention for you. He says for the Chazon Ish, it's precisely the difficulty in observing mitzvot. That is, there's constant trials and struggles, and it's because of this ongoing struggle by this, you develop the positive character traits that allow you to live a proper life. However, if you go to Navardic, which is the one he criticizes most, it's not like that at all. In Navardic, you had to do actions, what they call pu'ulos. That is, you have to do various actions, which then allow you to reach that point where you're living the proper way. But for the Chazon Ish, to observe halacha properly is you are consistently confronted with trials and tribulations, and that itself is all you need to focus on. To be a Shulchan Aruch Yid, a Shulchan Aruch Jew, to be medekdek in all the mitzvos. And if you
So one common way of understanding definition of an Orthodox Jew is one who takes on the requirements of the Shulchan Aruch, a 15th century compendium of Jewish law.
Do that properly, that creates who you should be. You don't need to do all these pu'ulos and all these extra spiritual exercises, which then gets you to the place that now you can learn. No, you don't need to. He says it.
So I was initially attracted to Judaism in part to try to morally improve myself, but I didn't make any progress until I found 12-step programs. Everything else failed for me. Christianity failed for me in this regard. Judaism failed for me in this regard. Self-help failed for me in this regard. Psychotherapy failed for me. Every method that I tried to morally improve myself failed until I started participating in 12-step programs, and until I really started taking them seriously by about 2016. That's when I started to see an improvement in the way I conducted myself.
This is what the Chazon Ish says in Emunah Bitachon, translated by Kaplan. And it's obvious that he has Navardic in mind. The precise fulfillment of the law is the only way to rectify evil traits.
Now, I was able to rectify a whole lot of evil predispositions and evil traits simply by getting medicated for ADHD, right? Almost everyone who's a sex addict or an addict has ADHD, right? You cure the ADHD and they will be 50% of the way there for recovery. So you can look at these disturbing traits and you can look at them in religious and moral and godly terms, but frequently it is far more effective to address them through medication, through ADHD medication or whatever is the appropriate amount of medication. Because as long as someone is being just bombarded in their brain with all sorts of antisocial instincts, it'll be very difficult to make progress on their character traits, whether it's through Mussar or anything else that is, text-based, religious-based, rational-based.
A person should not seek out trials in order to train himself in the rectification of his character traits.
So why did I remain Orthodox when Orthodox Judaism was not the thing that was going to morally improve me? Because I like it. It has so much depth and meaning to me, the way it can transform your day. It gives a rhythm to your day, gives a rhythm to your week, gives a rhythm to the seasons. You get close to people, you build something together. It is an inexhaustible area for intellectual and spiritual work. So it's not going to cure me of my addictions, but once I get my ADHD medicated, once I get my addictions under control, then I can receive the benefits of Orthodox Judaism, and I just barely scratched the surface.
Traits. On the contrary, he says, you're supposed to avoid this. That is, you're not supposed to come up with certain plans to how to fix yourself. No, you're not supposed to think about these things. That's another problem, the Musarniks. They're always thinking about these matters. Don't think about them. Just do. A person who observes the commandments in all their precise details is able to train himself well to incite the good Yetzer and against
the good Yetzer. Okay, what's it like? Things they don't tell you about
welcome
living.
Back to the channel. This is a video that I've been thinking about doing for quite a while. Things they don't tell you about living alone as an old man. I myself lived alone for almost 15 years, going back and forth on cruise ships. So when I was home, I lived in a big house all by myself. And a lot of the guys who've been communicating with me lately have been telling me that, they had a bad divorce and they're just happy to be alone and they like to be by themselves and they don't need anybody else in their life. That's well and good, but you're going to be your own emergency backup. I know of an expat who fell in the shower. They didn't find him for hours. And I know of another guy who fell in his house. Nobody knows what happened, but he fell. They didn't find him for a couple of days and he passed away. You have to have someone that's going to be.
My uncle fell between two beds. He got tangled up and he was there for days before people found him. He was still alive, but just imagine what a hell that is.
Checking on you from time to time, or somebody knows your routine and says, hey, I haven't seen John in a long time. Maybe we should go check on him. Some of the single guys I know are so afraid of falling or something happening, they keep their phones with them within reach everywhere they go in their house. And this is not a bad idea if you're a senior.
And I have fallen, like occasionally my lower back used to go out once or twice a year, and I would be unable to get up. I remember it first happened when I was about 25. I went to get out of bed and I fell on the floor. I was living with my parents, but my parents were gone. And my lower back went out on me and I could not get up. And I yelled and yelled out the window for help, but We lived alone on 7 acres. No one could hear me. We were out in the country. After about an hour, I was able to roll onto my side and push myself up. But I've had other times my lower back would go out of me, and I could not raise my feet more than a foot, an inch above the ground. So, yeah, I have known way too often what it's like to be completely immobilized, to fall out of bed and just be unable to get up.
Now in America, they've got things like Life Alert. We can have this little chain around your neck with a button you can push and have emergency come to your house. They don't have that here in the Philippines.
And point in the chat, you think that the need to stick to a routine and continually failing helped you to realize that you needed outside help? Yes. Would you have realized that if you were part of some other religion? Who knows? But there is a great openness in Orthodox Judaism and among the Orthodox Jews I know to people needing outside help, whether it's psychotherapy, medication, whatever it is. So I liked, respected, and appreciated the Orthodox Jews that I lived and governed among.
So you're kind of required to take care of yourself. And also with the cell phone here where I live, and I live in a populated area, cell phone service goes out all the time, internet goes out all the time. So you might have something happen and you're trying to call from help and your phone won't even work. And so there's other things you can do. And here's a tip.
There are other things you can do to minimize your chances of falling. So Alexander technique, but even when I was doing the Alexander technique, my lower back would still go out of me. I had to add strain, counter strain, otherwise known as positional release. I do those exercises every day. And sometimes I'll notice my lower back starting to go out on me. So I'll add additional exercises. I'm thinking about one particular technique. Let me find it.
That I came up with myself. When I lived in Utah, I used to hike alone in remote canyons, miles from civilization. And I kept a whistle on a lanyard around my neck. I bought it at a camping store, and it was the manufacturer.
I remember hiking through a national forest in Australia on a rainy day, and I didn't see anyone for hours. It was a little spooky. Oh, love the McKenzie method, right, for physical therapy. Some exercises in the McKenzie method for when your lower back goes out on you that I found particularly helpful. And when I start to have trouble, I start doing those exercises more. Like whenever I get any problems, like shoulders, wrist, hamstrings, lower back, whatever, I get to work to minimize being rendered helpless.
Sure, called it the world's loudest whistle. It's an orange whistle. And I checked, and you can buy a similar thing online. They have them on Amazon, a couple other websites. And what I was thinking, if you had one of these, and say you fell in your house, you could be blowing on this whistle and they would hear you for sure. Just let your neighbors know. Say, if you ever hear a whistle, and show it to them, it's me and I'm in distress, please come in and help me.
Right. The best way to go through life is to be connected with other people. Best way to survive some emergency such as a crippling earthquake is to be connected with your neighbors.
And also, if someone hears a whistle like that going off in a house, something's wrong, and they're going to check on you. And you definitely will hear this. It might be a good idea to hide, a key somewhere, or let a friend know that where a key is. So if, say, something does happen and you call for help, they don't have to knock the door down or break a window to get into your house. Another problem is loneliness. It can be a real struggle, even for those introverts, those guys that claim, oh, I love.
And I know that Trump appointed Elise Stefanik. Apparently, she's going to be the UN ambassador. The UN ambassador gets to say a lot of beautiful words, but it's not a position that, to my mind, has a great deal of importance. It gets you on TV. You get to orate a lot. Not sure it has great significance. Kip, what's going on, man?
Not too much. I was just enjoying the reflective side of Luke. I enjoyed Luke, the news aggregator, but I also enjoy Luke when he gives us, the reflective side, where I can tell you've done a little bit of analysis, in the last 24 hours or something, and I can kind of hear it coming out in some of the words that you say. Of course, don't get me wrong. I enjoy being henpecked by the wife that I don't have now. And I enjoy the psychoanalytical side, where you try to spin me around in circles or whatever. But I do like the reflective side too. So have you got anything you want to share with us on the what's it all about front? Because it sounds like, have you had any of that kind of thinking going on? What's it all about? Or
I guess I have, because it's a holiday, and so I'm out of my routine. And so there was more open time today. And so there was more reflection. And also, I didn't feel that energized. And so my intention was to spend my day reading books and or combined with a long hike. And I did neither. I did 3 miles of walking, but I was just tired. And I had a good night's sleep, but I just spent much of the day just lying down, listening to talks and podcasts. And so it probably made me feel a little bit melancholy, a little bit introspective. I mean, this wasn't my ideal way of spending a day. So yeah, a little more introspective tonight. Yeah.
I think you figured out sometime in your 58 years that one of the truest of the truisms is when they say ignorance is bliss. And you and I find out in the obverse way, because you know the opposite of ignorance is bliss, which is someone like me realized a long time ago that when you scratch at everything like I do, all you're bringing is misery into yourself. You know what I mean? You just scratch at everything and scratch at everything, trying to search at truth. And on the flip side of the equation, that dumb blonde just goes around ignorance is bliss. You know, she doesn't even have to have an opening conversation or anything like that. Everybody wants to screw her anyway. So I don't know. Guys like Dostoevsky say that guys like you and me are doomed to be unhappy because you see through things. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't think we're doomed to be unhappy, but I think everyone has to have an adaptive way of handling comparison. You can't help but compare yourself to other people, and you can't help but notice ways that you're wiser and kinder and finer. And you also can't help but notice ways that you're inferior, falling behind, and just not getting it done compared to your peers. And you want to be able to take in as much of that information as possible, right? You want to get all the benefit from clarity. There was a terrific article in The Atlantic today that said that Democrats got the gift of clarity from this election, and they should seize it. And so we all have the opportunity to get the gift of clarity, particularly when we get humiliated. And the more information that you can take in, the better. So the author of this piece is Mark Leibovich, and he talked about he had dreams of becoming a professional baseball player. Then in 7th grade, he stepped up to the plate against a pitcher who could throw a curveball, and he just could not hit the curve. And so he went back to the bench. He realized that he was never going to be a professional baseball player. And so he deduced, when life offers clarity, take the gift. Democrats should take the gift, but we should all take the gift. We frequently have opportunities for clarity, but you have to have a certain level of inner peace and inner strength to be able to accept the gift of clarity. And my gift of clarity today was that I just, my get up and go had got up and gone.
Right. Yeah, that's like with me now that I have so much time on my hand for the past 20 years or so that sometimes my mind gets the best of me. And I was remembering tonight how the bright idea of a man needs to leave a legacy. I need to leave some sort of a tangible legacy for my kids. And I was thinking that I was shortchanging them by the fact that I was living on a 44-foot houseboat, just having a ball, Luke Ford, just having a ball. And so I tried to grasp. That's where I should have known better. I tried to go out there and grasp something. And the first time I went for it, I got a great deal on house number 1. But of course I had 2 children. So I had to reach out there and grasp again. And I got lassoed into some deal between my sister and her then boyfriend. And it just turned into a mountain of misery. That one of those things where you just stay up at night 100 times over wishing, God, I wish I could unwind this. I'd pay $25,000 cash right now just to unwind this and learn a life lesson. Fuck that. I'll pay $50,000 to unwind this right now and say that I earned that life lesson. Don't you hate those type of those type of things where you,
well,
where
yeah,
you get out.
they're painful and they prick your delusions, and there's often considerable humiliation.
Yeah, yeah. And then like the cherry on top of it is I kept getting screwed over by the builder on house 2, and my dad had noticed how I stopped talking about it. I said, it's depressing me so much. I just don't want to talk about it. He said, yeah, but you can't just let it sit there and rot. You've got to go up there and finish it. So I basically just attached myself to it. And I found out, Luke, that I was not a fancy man. You know, some people are fancy. They can live one place and they go spend weekends in the Hamptons or weekends somewhere else. I'm not a fancy man like that. I can only hang my hat in one place and call it home. And as soon as I tried to attach myself to this construction monstrosity on the mountain that I had to finish, because there was no Superman. That's only on TV. There's no Superman coming to save me. And if someone bills himself as such, he's a con man. So it was a terrible thing to get one of those. I think it was like 3:37 in the morning. I got a phone call from the dock master letting me know that my beautiful 44.5-foot houseboat has sunk, and I need to do something about that. That was $5,500 to find people with enough insurance and the balls to lift up that much weight, you know, off the dock. It had propped up a huge dock, was now elevated in the air trying to hold up my houseboat. You get what I'm saying? Just the worst nightmare. And it all came from me wanting to leave a legacy, Luke. Wanting to leave a legacy. I mean, dumb. Can you give me 30 seconds to pull a pizza out of the oven?
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, let's hear what...
Distance, and is ready to hit the ground running. His new chief of staff says this: the window to revolutionize the government is more like 2 years rather than 4. And while Trump takes over the government, Democrats are trying to figure out what to do with Kamala. First, they floated the idea of putting her on the Supreme Court. They tried to force wise Latina Sonia Sotomayor.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've really been beating myself up about that. Plus, I feel that sometimes you're trying to unravel me, and I feel like I must be painting this portrayal of some perfect human or whatever. He's not been to my house. He's not seen the unfinished projects. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things to where we dig ourselves into these holes, and so many times it's all self-inflicted, Luke. You know, it was a legacy. What the hell is that? When the worms are eating my mind, what do I give a shit about a legacy? You know what I'm saying? I see the way the culture is retarding. What do I give a shit about a legacy?
Right. So you've developed a hero system that makes your choices heroic, like we all do. We all develop a hero system that makes our choices seem heroic to us. And so we attach ourselves to something that we think will echo in eternity, even though our own life is trivial. We believe that we're part of something bigger. So you connect to the Almighty, to the universe. You attach yourself to seekers and scholars and practitioners of mysticism. I do what I do. Other people have other hero systems that give their life significance.
Yeah, but a lot of it is bullshit. Because I've told you, even when you try to do quote unquote the right thing, you lose sleep over it in the end. You get what I'm saying? It's something goes haywire. It's like
So you're saying our hero systems might be fictional, that we might be choosing to live in a world of delusion, that our lives have far more significance than they really do?
Yeah, I'm saying the whole thing. Unfortunately, the whole thing truly is a bunch of bull. And I know that sometimes we lay down these myths through our culture that do give people a framework, you know, to sort of get by. But I'm telling you, the truth of it is, God, it's all up for, you know what I mean? Everything is up for debate. And that's like with you rabbis, with your rabbis. On one hand, maybe I can appreciate that, but on the other hand, I'm very skeptical about how having New York Times like editorials done, over and over and over again from scripture 2,000 centuries ago, because someone like me would think it's gonna be taking it, the old ways are going to be forgotten, and they're going to be going soft just to comport with the new realities of this world that we live in now. So I don't know. I'm trying not to digress here, but you can tell. Plus, Luke, I think I'm a little fucked up today because I've been reading a little bit of Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West, and that's a heavy read. Have you ever messed with that?
Yes.
That's a heavy read, and it'll bum you out too, because a lot of that stuff he's saying is true, and then you start thinking this son bitch picked up on this right after World War I. You know what I mean? He picked up on this a long time ago. So we've kind of slipped in what he was talking early autumn. Hell, we're probably in the late autumn now of what he was talking about. But anyway, I was gonna to try to maybe to try to get you thinking a little bit far out, because I am a mystic. I was going to play a little Gedanken experiment with you, and we're just going to pretend that back in 1966, Australia had a kick-ass space program, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they focused on rocketry and genetics, and they launched an infant named Luke Ford into sort of a Truman Show type existence on board a rocket with a mission to visit the nearest star to our own sun. So you get the mission, right? You are Lyco the dog, right? You are Lyco the dog, except you're a kid. And the thing is, the universe, I don't think people realize how big it is. So this is our mission. We're just gonna go there. Fuck it, we're just gonna do it. Luke's gonna do it. So anyway, somewhere you're in there, you're like 114 years old. You've been in there since the week of your birth, and something flashes across your 1966 computer screen that says, "Congratulations, Luke." Because I forgot to add, your spaceship goes 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's important, because this little thing that's flashed up on your computer screen is congratulating you because you're 114 years old now, and you've been going 1,000,000 miles an hour for 1,000,000 hours. So you're actually 1,000,000,000,000 miles into space. And then the little, how the old cursors used to go dot, 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 dot. It's got something else to tell you, but you're 1,000,000,000,000 miles away, so it's taking a minute. And then it says, only 25 trillion more miles to go, Luke. So I guess at that point, it's probably dawning on you that you thought this was going to be a big trip, a quick trip, but it's going to take 5,700 years here and back just to visit the closest star to our own sun. And fuck, there's hundreds of billions more.
I mean, I know I'd miss the Earth so much. I'd miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a timeless flight. I think it's going to be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again.
And so, I mean, it takes little things like that. When I'll be mowing the grass, my mind will start doing stuff because I like math. So I'll start figuring out, okay, it's only 4.2 million light years away. What if I had a spaceship capable of going 50 times faster than that thing that blew up a few years ago coming into Earth's atmosphere as it was crossing Texas? They were going like 20,000 miles an hour when they crossed over you in California. So I said, fuck that. What if we were going 1,000,000? Even at 1,000,000 to visit that closest star, Luke, that's a 5,700 year round trip. And that's the closest star. That's the closest star. And there's hundreds of billions of other ones right here in our own galaxy. And then there's hundreds of billions of more galaxies yet to be explored after we get Luke Ford or Lyco the dog out there. You know what I'm saying? So it's just so mind-boggling. It always comes back to, what's that all about? What's that all about? So it's going to sound crazy when I say it, but sometimes every once in a while I think about if I play my cards right, you know, could I be a star? You know, where's it go from here? You know, would you just there's got to be, because you would think there's got to be something more, Luke. You know, I would think do you think of yourself as like a happy accident? Or do you think of yourself as like some sort of a cosmic observer? Do you think of yourself as a baby maker? If that's what you think of yourself as, you kind of fucked up on that one. Do you think of yourself as you're just here to vlog? You know, you were put here just to vlog? Or do you think you're here to consume products? Or maybe something else?
I'm a rocket man. I'm a rocket man. I'm not the man they think I am at home. I'm burning out my fuse up here alone. Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell.
I was trying to somehow get us to comprehend what 25 trillion miles each way is. But it's truly incomprehensible, isn't it, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say yes to all those things you said and more. I mean, I love my brother and sister. I have friends that I love. I feel a commitment to the United States. I enjoy pursuing truth. So all those things you suggested, but more. I mean, I don't want to be in Mars. It's not the kind of place to raise your kids. It's cold as hell. There's no one there to raise them if you did. All the science I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week. I'm a rocket man.
But you're the one guy who could have had that you got the makeup to where you could have been that Truman Show dude going out in space going, what was that I just passed? You know, what was that? And just vlogging about it, you know what I mean?
Yes.
1 trillion miles deep into space? This I can see. I don't know. You can tell I'm kind of out there. So anyway, I guess I'll eat my pizza. But as always, I appreciate you, Luke.
Thanks, bro. Great to catch up with you. Talk to you later,
Later,
kid.
dude. Right.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right. Rocket Man here. Just final words, things they don't tell you about living alone as an old man.
Being alone, I'm so happy being alone. I hated living with my wife and kids, and now that I'm alone, I just love it. And sometimes it is perfect. Sometimes it's great for guys like that. But however, singles that I've talked to, expats that have been alone for a while, they tell me that often they'll go days and days without speaking to a single person. And this can lead to a feeling of isolation and sometimes even depression. Now, having a pet can help. A lot of guys told me in some of my other videos in the comments.
Being part of an organized religion, being part of a charity, being part of a 12-step community, having a sports bar that you frequent, right? Being a part of a yoga class, right? There are all sorts of easy ways that you can stay connected with other people.
They said, oh, I've got my dog, and the dog's all the companionship I need. And here in the Philippines, like, dogs are very popular. Everybody has dogs. And of course, they'll deter burglars too. I see a lot of foreigners out walking their dogs, and many seniors have commented that that's all they need as far as, companionship. But again, who's going to care for your dog if something suddenly happens and you can't? If you have a heart attack or die or fall and get hurt, and you're in your apartment or your house, and you're just there alone with your dog can't do anything for you. And unfortunately, you can't do anything for the dog either. This is another one, home maintenance. Many of the guys that I know that are retired, especially those that are still in their home country and haven't come to the Philippines, they own their own homes. And they might have been good at maintaining them with repairs and fixing stuff when they were younger. But as they age, it starts to get harder and harder to fix things. And a lot of times their homes start to fall into disrepair.
Hello. This is my very first YouTube video. I've watched a lot of YouTube. Interesting thing is I didn't start watching YouTube until 2020, during the lockdowns. I was remodeling my late father's house. He had passed away. I decided to remodel it and was looking up some information on flooring and plumbing and all that good stuff, and then all these videos popped up. And then noticed on the side all these other channels and videos, and that's what got me started in YouTube and just consuming different types of content. And so I thought, after all these years, starting my own YouTube channel, but was not sure what would be my topic, what would I talk about. And so I thought, well, just share my story for now. Everybody has a story. And so I think when we share our stories, I think we'll be surprised on how many people can relate to them, and we realize we're not alone. And that's something that I've learned by watching YouTube as well. So what about me? What's something that is worthy of sharing? Of many things. I'm 51, never married, no children. And I know there's a lot of people out there like me that get asked why you're not married, why didn't you get married? You know, you're a good-looking guy, you've got a lot of good things going for you. I'm surprised some girl hasn't just snatched you up there, Jim. Throughout the years, I did date. And I always thought that I would be married and have children. I planned for it. I grew up in church, Christian church. And so I had those values growing up. And joined the military after I graduated high school. I ended up retiring from the military after 23 years, U.S. Army, and did well for myself. And was successful at it. And like I said, I dated throughout the years. And either the women that I liked didn't like me back in return, the ones that I was really interested in. And then those that I didn't think we had a connection, or I just wasn't into them, they were the ones into me. I've never been in a situation where it was mutual. I've never been in a dating situation where we were both into each other. It's always one-sided.
It will always be one-sided, right? So initially, you might be very commonly more into her, and then there will be a period where she'll be more into you. Like, even if you are married for 55 years, it will never be exactly even, right? One person will be more into the other than at various times.
And not only that, watching YouTube, I came across the red pill content. Some of you are familiar with it, where you have content creators sharing about the nature of women and what they respond to, what they're attracted to, what their natural state is. That is something that I did not know years ago. And here I am, 51 years old, wishing that I had learned about the nature of women 30 years ago. And that would have helped me tremendously in my dating life. And I floundered around, just did not get it right. All the things that you could do wrong in dating, I did each and every one of them. Showing too much interest, probably appeared too needy, too available. I was too easy for her. She didn't have to compete for me.
One word to be more successful with women: challenge. So I was the nice guy, the nurturing guy, and women had contempt for me. When I changed my game, I became much more social with women.
Answered text messages too soon. I called too soon after dates. Go right on down the list. I did them and didn't realize what I was doing was actually turning them away. Then I discovered on YouTube this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. And it turns out that I am a nice guy. And I've heard women in the past say that to me, Jim, you're too nice. But I didn't necessarily know what that meant. What did that mean? And so that book really opened my eyes to what a nice guy is. And you'll hear, the expression, girls don't like nice guys, or nice guys finish last. And how true that is. And I would recommend any man who is a nice guy or been told that, to pick that book up and read it. And when
Yep, I thoroughly concur with that sentiment. No more Mr. Nice Guy.